Say hello. Hello, everyone. We are live. We're running a little behind today. Sorry, I had a daughter getting a doctor's appointment that ran a little bit behind, but we're still here. Going to give you a show. Mike and I, we're not sure if Kevin's going to be here or not yet. We're waiting on that one. Bill Meltzer's going to join us, though. That's always fun. So we'll talk a little bit of Flyers coaching rumors, I'm sure.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of things going on this weekend, did we?
Yeah, there's nothing happening.
I'm actually writing about the weekend in sports. Not only, uh-oh.
What the hell happened here? Oh. Mike.
I've
There you
heard
are. You're
about
back.
I've heard about cutting a conversation short, but that's ridiculous.
That was crazy. What the
Yeah.
heck happened there? I don't know. That was a nice little computer glitch. But you got back with your same invite, which is good.
Okay. No, I was about to say I'm writing about the weekend in hockey, but also the weekend in sports. I mean, it was not only the NBA, the NFL draft, the
Yep.
Kentucky Derby, the Pacquiao Mayweather farce, Major League Baseball, which I was focused on the Yankees and the Red Sox, and much to my joy, the Yankees swept the Red Sox in Boston, and four NHL playoff series. So yeah, that was enough to talk about.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, the problem here is see like the other. Can you see those three series ending in a sweep, and then we have just nothing but to watch the Rangers and Capitals play for a couple of days?
I think Minnesota will win a game. I think Calgary will win a game. I think Montreal will win one. I think Carey Price will steal one, and we'll talk about that. But I mean, that's sort of the central theme of my articles regarding the Habs, and the fact that everybody is just talking about the fact that they're falling apart. That's the reason why Brandon Pruss losing his gourd last night and throwing his elbow pad at the Tampa bench is just a sign that they're falling apart. No, I mean Tampa's finally playing up to their capabilities, and they're the better team. That's what's going on here, and they've dominated Montreal. Now, what I think, what is it?
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah,
I'm not so sure. Hello, Kevin.
he's got the phone ringing, so
No problem.
yeah. So I can continue my anti-Hab diatribe. No,
Yeah, sure, go for it.
no, but
Everyone loves those.
I'm like I said, I'm not saying that Montreal is not a good team. I'm not. I think Carey Price will deservedly win the Hart Trophy. He is a fantastic goaltender. He's the best goaltender in the NHL. I think PK Subban is a great defenseman. They just don't have enough, and they can't score. And they scored one goal in game one, and they scored two goals. One of them an by the way goal in the third period in game two. And against Tampa Bay, you have to score more than 1.5 goals per game.
Just gonna eat some salad while we talk about this.
Oh, okay.
Just kidding. I'm with you. No, it was a joke. Can't eat my salad. I'm gonna look at my salad all show longingly, but No time for it. Um, no, I don't know. I mean, I, there's no question. Well, we'll definitely talk about this. So we'll hold off on this. I want to start here because before Kevin gets back, I want to talk about Avengers: Age of Ultron. Okay.
I haven't seen it yet. Don't tell me
Won't
any
say
plot
anything
lines.
about
But
nothing about plot lines. All I will say is it's awesome.
okay, I want to see it. The first Avengers movie was, I thought, fantastic. So I'm definitely going to see it, but was going to wait until the crowd sort of
And
dissipated.
this is my theory about these Avengers movies. They are, and I'm not gonna give away anything. I promise you, nothing. Because I don't want to give away anything. It's a really interesting story. They did good, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, there's billions of dollars being spent on special effects in these Avengers movies, no question about it. But what makes these movies awesome is Josh Whedon, the writer. I mean, he's amazing. There's no, I mean, he is by far, because he knows these characters so intrinsically. Like he knows things about these characters that only super duper fanboys know about them, and he slips stuff in there somehow in what is has to be a tight script that he's got. I'm sure they're saying you got to keep it shorter because he could probably write 6-hour stories with these guys.
There's a humanity to the stories. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
there's a it's a comic book. But there's
But
a
it's incredible.
reality and a humanity to the stories that makes it believable. And plus, you have, I mean, come on, you have some of the top actors in the game right now. I mean, Robert Downey Jr.,
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo. I mean, you have a great cast of characters, and they all work together well. So I mean, I compare that, like, I was a big fan of the Dark Knight series, of the Batman Dark Knight series. All three movies were, they're dark. They're sort of,
They're definitely dark.
they're dark, but they were excellent. They were, great cast, great acting, great story. Um, that's where I'm sort of critical of sort of the Man of Steel bent, that, and now these Batman versus Superman movie that's going to come out.
Yeah, you see.
I think they're really stretching it, and I think the quality, and there are some actors in the Man of Steel movie that I liked a lot, but it just seems, I mean, Superman has just been. I mean, they just made a new Superman a few years ago, and then, was it Brandon Routh?
Yeah.
And then and they had Kevin Spacey as
I
Lex
mean,
Luthor.
I didn't mind Man of Steel, but it was this is the thing about the Avengers though. What is incredible about this, the Avengers specifically, not even specifically to like the Iron Man movies or anything like that, but the Avengers specifically, the ones that are written by Josh Whedon,
Yeah.
are, I can watch it, you can watch it and love it, and my 10-year-old can watch it and love it. And it's not, it's just, he somehow manages this like incredible, and I'm not going to spoil the Avengers movie for you, Kevin, but you guys have to go see it. It's got to be seen in a theater too.
And I also I'm a big X-Men.
Right, but that's also dark, right? And I mean, see, like I like the Batman movies too, but the Avengers, Josh is such a good writer that he manages to stay on this line between comic book and reality, and make it so like the first word in the movie is a curse word, which is like real shocking because it's like the Avengers, there are hardly any curses throughout the whole Avengers, but they make a joke out of it right away, and that there's just a real humanity to this group. And the way Josh Whedon is the whole thing. I mean, without him, I wouldn't want to see a Avengers movie. I mean, he's the writer, and he's just kills it. I mean, there's little things like, and I know you were a comic book guy, Kevin.
Oh yeah, yeah, big time. Yeah, no, I would say the Marvel comic books had as much impact on me as sports did.
Wow.
It was just to me, it was reading comic books and watching sports. That's what's pretty much got me through the 1960s.
So you were a fan of the first Avengers movie?
Oh yeah, yeah. I thought I thought they've done a really nice job on it, and that was it's kind of hard to sort through. It was interesting to hear Mike talking about he was an X-Men guy because when I was a kid, we didn't have the entertainment options that obviously today's generation has. So comic books were a staple, and you were kind of pigeonholed by who your favorites were, and I was kind of Sergeant Fury and Avengers and Fantastic Four, and some people were Obviously, Spider-Man and X-Men, etc. But I thought it was kind of funny. I mean, I heard a psychologist talk about one of the problems, and the explanation for why people get carried away with sports has to do with the fact that in the previous generation, everybody identified with groups, so they had a backing. You were either Catholic or you're Democratic or you're Irish American. Your family belonged to the Knights of Columbus or the Masons or whatever. Well, when you were a kid, there was a neighborhood group. You were also identified by the comic books you read, and the sports teams you followed, and there was a whole lot of groups, so you were always kind of part of it. And now that's all splintered. There are no groups. You don't really divide people that way.
Or what music you liked. I mean, that seemed to also
Yeah.
be sort of stratification.
Yeah.
At least in my
I agree with
neighborhood.
that.
But I have a son, okay, who's 10, and he's like the perfect age for this, right? And there are X-Men groups and there are Avengers groups, and I watched it. It's still going on. Like some of his friends like the X-Men because they're mutants, and the others like the Avengers because they're,
I think. See, the thing is, I mean, I like them. I judge the quality of the movie. Like I said, I think the Batman movies were fantastic. Not as much the Tim Burton ones. I mean, I thought they were good, but they really didn't have the impact that the Christopher Nolan ones did. But like Fantastic Four, what they've done with them, I think were terrible. They were terrible movies. I think the Spider-Man movies, they got worse as they went along, and then they reboot Spider-Man after you had Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. I mean, they rebooted it a year after or 2 years after the last series. So it's like that's a sign of Hollywood like sort of running out of ideas.
It is and it isn't. And before we get to hockey, this is a great discussion. I'd love to have this discussion for the whole hour, actually, but we won't. But it is and it isn't, because one of the things about comic books, another thing about comic books, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, about this, is that I know now at least. I wasn't as big of a comic book person as you guys were, but I know I was into Ultraman, like the TV show Ultraman. I love that show. And I definitely and the Batman TV show, the original Batman, the Adam West Batman show, that was like a must, and the original Spider-Man show too. But it seems like that now at least there's all these universes, right? You have the Avengers like universe that's like hardcore adult Avengers, and then there's the Avengers Kid universe. So it's kind of like, I feel like that's what they did with Batman. Like they have a hardcore man, a real like adult Batman, and then like the Avengers is definitely, and that's what's so brilliant about it, right? Because it's straddling this line so well that it's owned by Disney, and there's it's just and they actually do straddle the line better than anything I think that's ever been done as far as that kind of stuff goes.
I mean, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I was just going to say, let me tie comic books back with hockey. I can't remember when I told this story on this podcast or on the cranky old hockey writers, but the fact that I bought my comic books from a former NHL player.
Wow. Yeah, I think that was that's a great story.
Yeah, I mean, I bought my comic books. They were 12 cents back when I started collecting, which identifies me as being part of the Paleozoic era. But the deal is that at Foster's Party Store, as it was called, and it was run by a man we referred to as Old Man Foster. And Old Man Foster would buy the comics back from the kids, 2 for a nickel, and then sell them at the discounted price of a nickel. So I would go down to Old Man Foster's, as we called him, and I was just petrified of the guy. He looked scary to me. And I would purchase most of the Sergeant Fury comic books that I own, which I still own, and some of the early Spider-Man, some of the other comic books I bought right there for a nickel at Foster's. And about 10 years ago, maybe even less than that, I was at a party where someone said they were from my same hometown and said he lived from. We got some feedback somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's Bill. I think you need to get some headphones going, Bill. Maybe.
Or lower your speakers.
Or lower your speaker volume, one or the other. Continue.
Someone told me about 7 years ago that we somehow got talking about Foster's. He said that guy was a former NHL player, and I said, no way. I cover the NHL. I think I would know if Old Man Foster was a former NHL player. So I looked him up real quick in the Hockey Encyclopedia, and I couldn't find him. And so I discounted it, and then I actually had gone to a family funeral just about 6 months ago. And one of my cousins who lived right around there said, "Oh no, it's true." He said he played for the Maple Leafs. Well, now because it was my cousin who told me that. I did a little more research, and I actually found out that the old man Foster, as we call him, was Yip Foster, who played for 3 teams, not the Maple Leafs though. I believe he played for the Red Wings and Rangers. And he had settled into Wayne, Michigan, after his career with the Red Wings. So there's the connection that ties the comic books.
It's so
and
beautiful.
so now we can go back to hockey.
Thank you so much, Kevin, king of transition. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. You sound pretty good. You got a little bit of reverb there, but not too bad. So yeah, let's get started. I mean, awesome stuff. I could talk about this all day. Definitely check out Age of Ultron it's just as good as the first one, if not better. It's right up there with Guardians of the Galaxy, which is also awesome. There's tons of good movies out there for the if you're a superhero thing, and it is also funny how big it is, how big superheroes are. That's just an incredible thing, and it makes me wonder what's going to be big when our kids have kids. Is it going to be superheroes? Is it going to be like the return to or like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles going to be huge all of a sudden? Like just something like that came out in that era, or these superheroes going to stay huge?
Yeah, right now they're big again, actually.
I know they are big already. I know they're already.
That's a nightmare for me because I worked at a movie theater when we had the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the theater I worked in had 800 kids. 800 kids come in 4 times a day, dumping popcorn and pop and everything all over the floor, and me and 2 other people had to clean that up in 15 minutes. It was such a joy.
Oh yeah, that's what you get for working in the theater like that. All right, so and speaking of all of this, let's start the show. All right, Hockey World, let's go. We'll still introduce Mike and then Bill and then Kevin. Okay. Hey, Hockey World, May the 4th be with you. It is May 4th, Monday, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Bill Meltzer.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com on this Star Wars Day, as they call it. That's why we had a little discussion about the comic heroes beforehand. So if you want to go back and check that out, you can for sure.
And this is my little bit of rebellion since I'm more of a Star Trekkie than a Star Wars person. I was doing
First, we find out that you're a Republican. Then we find out you're a Star Trekkie. I mean, what's the deal?
What's wrong with Star Trek? What is wrong with Star Trek?
Nothing. There is nothing wrong with Star Trek.
There's nothing wrong with Star Trek, but if Star Wars versus Star Trek, honestly, Star Trek.
Star Trek was before it.
It was before it, but
Yeah.
Let's talk hockey, please.
Let's talk hockey. All right, so this weekend, we oddly enough have 3 series that I did not expect to be. We have 3 series at the 2-0, and it looks like next week we'll be doing nothing but watching the Caps and the Rangers play each other, perhaps.
And talking about Age of Ultron. There you go.
Yeah, but where are we going with this? Anything surprise you, Kevin, in these first couple games?
Well, I've was witness to the Blackhawks, in Chicago taking down Minnesota twice, and a couple of observations. The Blackhawks, have remembered they are the Blackhawks, and by that I mean, they're doing whatever's necessary to win, and it's interesting that the Minnesota Wild players are even noting that. Last night, Ryan Suter, who was victimized on the couple of goals, he coughed it up, lost it to Marian Hossa on a goal, and then he lost track of Patrick Kane, and Kane takes the home run pass from Duncan Keith, and it was a huge goal. And to Ryan Suter's credit, stand-up guy, he came out and he said, I made a mistake, and when you make a mistake against this team, it's in the back of your net. He says they have the killer instinct, and that's what we've seen from them. I mean, they're doing whatever is necessary to win. They got 3 goals right out of the gate because I think they wanted to send a message. The Minnesota Wild sent a message back by tying the game, and then they get the game-winning goal, 4-3, and they're now 28-0, holding a lead this season going into the third period. I mean, they didn't even take any games in the regular season into overtime. I mean, some went into overtime, but they won them. I'm saying. Right, that's an amazing stat. So they've played really, really, well, and I think they have another gear. Like I don't even think we've seen the best of them yet. So it's been very impressive. I would think the Minnesota Wild are going to play better at home, and I think that's going to. If you remember, this is kind of the scenario we saw last year as well, and then the Wild went back and played well. I mean, I thought it was Mike Yeo came out last night and said, I still expect to win this series. Now, he's got to win 4 out of 5 against a team that now has 64 playoff wins since 2009. So 4 out of 5 against that group. Doesn't seem.
They haven't lost many games at all. I mean, that's crazy. And that's I mean, this series surprised me a lot. How about you, Bill? What's surprising you so far?
Well, in that particular series or overall?
Or just in general, in the 3 series.
In general?
4 series.
Yeah, I think that I can't say it's a surprise, but I think that after Tampa Bay got through that first round, they seem to be playing a lot looser, a lot more confidently. And that's often the case. A lot of times the first round is really the hardest one to win in a lot of cases, particularly when you come off of getting knocked out in the first round before. The degree, however, to which Tampa Bay kind of controlled the last game against Montreal surprised me a little bit. They're a very dangerous team now.
I know. They're absolutely. They look like the fulfillment of the prophecies, like for Tampa. What everybody said Tampa could be, This is this is it. They finally have. Kevin, you think?
I love that because you're absolutely right. And what's forgotten now, and I agree with what Bill said completely, that the first round sometimes you're stumbling, you haven't found your rhythm, your pace yet, and that's what happened to them. But the Red Wings played really well in that first round series. So they played better than the Canadiens are playing, and they put a little scare into the Lightning, and I think it did sort of serve as a wake-up call. And now the Lightning are playing the way they can. I mean, when they're playing well, they always look like they're going to score 6 goals against you, and that's the way they look now.
Well, I'm not surprised at the outcome so far of the Anaheim-Calgary series. I mean, I'm a little surprised at the dominance that Anaheim has had. They've outscored Calgary 9-1, and they sort of run roughshod over the Flames. They knocked out Hudler and Ferland in Game 1, and I mean, I think Ramo played a good game last night, but there was just too much Ducks there, and they I think they're probably going to win that series in 5 games, maybe 6 at the most. And we said there is a different gear for the Blackhawks. They seem to step up when the challenge is there. I think Minnesota can make this a series. I mean, they can go back to Minnesota and win 2 games and go even back to Game 5, but I just see Chicago eventually winning this series. The one that my interest is piqued is Tampa Montreal, and I thought Tampa was going to win this series. And the thing is that after the loss yesterday, a lot of people were saying that the Canadiens are sort of falling apart, that they've lost their cool. The Brandon Pruss throwing the elbow pad at the Tampa bench. There was. They said that they took a run at Bishop. I missed it. I didn't see it. But there just seems to be just like the team falling apart. I don't think they're falling apart. I think this is what the Montreal Canadiens are. This is the way they've been against Tampa all year. It's not a good matchup for them. And the flaws of the Canadiens are now showing up. They've scored 3 goals in the first 2 games against Tampa. And Tampa, and you can dispute Game 1, saying that overtime winner was offside, and it was, but I dispute, and I'm going against the majority of people out there. I think the Kucherov goal early in overtime should have counted. I don't think he pushed Price into the goal. I think it was momentum that pushed, that caused it, and I think the goal, to me, it was poetic justice that Kucherov scored the goal later in overtime, even though it was offside. So, I mean, I think Tampa has risen to the challenge. It's sort of like Boston against Montreal in 2011, where they were challenged by a team that wasn't as good, and then the Bruins won that series and then went on to win the Cup. I think Tampa is my prediction to win the Cup, and I think they're benefiting from the challenge that Detroit gave them in the first round, and now I think they're operating on all 8 cylinders, and Stamkos is going now too. So
Stamkos getting Stamkos going, of course, is huge. And to me, the key in this is right now is that the Canadiens have no way of stopping Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman looks like he can do whatever the hell he wants out there. Like he's the player of all the players in the playoffs right now that just looks like he's playing open hockey against these guys. Like he looks like that big defenseman who was always better than everybody else that came out to play open hockey because he used to play in college or something like that. He's just out there. He's just moving around, and he's literally he can take it end to end. He can do whatever he wants to with it. Montreal's got no answer. Hedman is just such a huge impactful player, Bill.
He is. He started out the year this season that way too, playing at that kind of just unbelievable level. Then got injured and really didn't hit that level totally until just recently. But yeah, he's been absolutely dominant both ends of the ice. I mean, he's looked like the player that he was hyped to be years ago, and that's something that's always a good case in point for whether it's with Seth Jones or Tyler Myers or whoever it is. I mean, a lot of times you just have to be patient with young defensemen, and now people are seeing why he was hyped the way that he was in the Tavares draft. He's been unbelievable.
No, it's fun to watch.
What's interesting about Hedman is, if you recall, when he was drafted, people said he was going to be an offensive force. And then after he was with Guy Boucher a while, I remember Boucher said, well, I think, we're reading too much into him. Like, he's a really good one-on-one defender, but I don't know how much offensive upside he has. And, obviously he does have offensive upside in a big way. So, I mean, I think he's coming of age, and I think he's a future Norris Trophy winner. I think he would have been in contention had he not become injured, because as Bill pointed out, he was playing really, really, really well. And one thing I would say about what Mike said, I agree that this is a terrible matchup for Montreal, but I disagree in the contention that the Montreal Canadiens are not falling apart. They are falling apart. I think they've become totally frustrated by the Lightning, and they've got to pull it together. I think that was Terrion's speech after the game. It was geared toward the fact that he could see his team is kind of disintegrating, and they know they're in trouble because they had so much trouble against the Lightning all season. But you can either react two ways. You can just get totally frustrated by your inability to deal with this, or you can try to figure out how to combat it. And right now they're falling apart as opposed to figuring out what to do with it. So
I agree with that. I do. I totally agree. And the Canadiens are usually pretty disciplined, and they usually play pretty good team defense. Especially their forwards aren't getting back, and their forwards aren't back checking at all, and that's killing them. And they don't have this. Go ahead, Mike.
They left Carey Price hanging out to dry yesterday, and he is, to me, the best goaltender in this league, and that's not exactly a bold statement. But you need to you need to help him out by playing solid defense, and B, you need to score goals.
Well, he looked like Carey Price in the All-Star game yesterday. Like that wasn't his fault. It's just like a great goalie playing against how goalies give up 15 goals in an All-Star game. Those goals were nothing. I mean, they were All-Star game goals that you couldn't, with a defense that was checking like an All-Star team defense. Like they weren't back checking. And I think that's where they're falling apart.
Yeah, and if you lose a guy like David Desharnais, who was out with an illness yesterday, not to say that they were completely, zero offensively because of that, but I mean, he's a key part of their offense because they don't have a lot of it. And you have Tampa right now, who is, like I said, operating on all 8 cylinders. You need for Montreal to win these games. They're probably gonna have to win games 2-1 or 1-0, or
that's how they have to win all their games. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't think that's possible against a high-powered offense like Tampa.
Oh, I agree with that. It doesn't seem like it is. At least if Tampa keeps playing like this. Now it'll be interesting to see how things change back in Tampa. I think Tampa would rather play the rest of the series in Montreal because they just couldn't get. They're just Now they're going home, and the Tampa building has been a very exciting building this year. I've talked to lots of people down there. They say it's really come into its own as far as a hockey building goes in this past year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've been down there this season, and first of all, the in-game experience in the Tampa Bay Arena is fantastic. Like anyone who ever has an opportunity to see a game there should, because it's just a lot of fun. They got a lot going on there. But one point I want to make about Tampa Bay is when the playoffs started, they didn't have Jason Garrison, and then he came back in the lineup, and then slowly he's sort of taken off the rust, and I think they're feeling whole again too. Like he's been a crucial guy for that team. So I think they've sort of the challenge of the Red Wings has helped them sort of come together, and I think getting Garrison back, I think Bishop has benefited by having playoff games experience, which he didn't have, coming in, and it's kind of all coming together. Also, John Cooper, he needed some more experience too. Obviously he's had it in the AHL level, but you still face different issues in the NHL in terms of preparing your team. So all of it. I never suspected for a minute that he wouldn't improve as well, because he's a very bright, articulate, insightful coach. So I think what we're seeing here is what we all knew all along, and that is a goalie does not a team make.
Yeah.
It's a big part of a team, and they can carry you and lift you, but you still got to have an offense. Mike and I have talked about this all season, and our belief that it was going to bite them, that they couldn't score goals. Or at least it was difficult to score goals, and it's biting them now, because they're in against a very dynamic team. And to be honest, if you're watching the Blackhawks play the Minnesota Wild, could you see the Montreal Canadiens beating them either?
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, that's you're absolutely right. And this is going to be a test for Therrien. I mean, this is a this is a Therrien test, because he's the kind of coach that coaches. And I know I've ripped him before, but I'm not speaking out of craziness. This is what people always say. Therrien's the kind of coach who coaches from a perspective of trying to get his team, turn his team against him at times. And I've also, that often works. It works a lot better when you're winning, for sure. When you're losing, your team just turns against you. And that's when you're losing. When you're winning, it's fine. So he's got to pull another rabbit out of his hat for this to make this work. And and he's also been compared, to a gambler who's gotten dealt a good hand, and Tampa's not a good hand to get dealt, So he's going to really have to show what he can do. I mean, I don't think it's impossible to pull out of this for Montreal still, because they do have Carey Price, but they have to. It was interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day, Bill. I would like your opinion on this, definitely, because we see certain series like I think the Calgary series, not Minnesota, Chicago, but Calgary and this series, the Montreal series. Here's two series where, in old school hockey, this third game would have to get ugly. Like the Calgary's got to make this game ugly. Calgary's got to take some, they've got to take some shots. They got to hit some people. They got to send some people out there. They should start the whole dirty talking thing should begin. The coach should be complaining about something. Right now, both these teams, Montreal and Calgary, need some kind of spark like that, and neither of these teams is really set up for that, which is surprising in some ways, But I don't, I mean, Calgary maybe more so, but Calgary looks just like they're in awe of Anaheim when I watch them play. So that's a hard thing right now. But what are your thoughts, Bill, on that?
Yeah, a lot of times, you try to feed off of emotion. You see them a lot of times traditionally you would see them the last 5 minutes of game 2, particularly if it's out of hand, to try to the whole sending a message. And when you're going home for games 3 and 4, Calgary in the first round almost didn't realize. They're a young team. They played with a lot of enthusiasm. They played very loose. I do think they've been a little bit in awe of Anaheim, and it's kind of hard not to be. But I think at times they've stood around and watched a little too much and not been proactive enough. They absolutely need. They absolutely need to dictate a little bit more. And I think that for both of these teams, you got to watch the first 10 minutes of the first period, because that's where they're gonna, you figure, come out firing in all cylinders of what they have. And if they don't jump up early, the other side can kind of take their best shot and hang in there, weather the storm. Then they're in trouble.
Is sending a message dead, Kevin?
Well, players always say that it is. Players always say there's no such thing as sending a message, but you certainly see it.
Does it work anymore though?
You don't think Brandon Prust wasn't sending a message at the end of that game?
Oh, I think that was part of it. And Brandon Prust, this is why Prust should be in line. I mean, this is what he does, right? There's no question that's part of it. But and because what Brandon Prust does has distracted today from what the Canadiens did, right? Like the people are writing stories about Prust and the ref, right? That's the distraction today from the whole fact that the Canadiens can't check the lightning. They can't stop the lightning.
Messages are still getting sent, but whether or not the other team is listening is another
Exactly.
matter. I mean, I don't know whether it has the same impact as it used to have. When the Flyers used to send you a message in the '70s, it was a tough message.
You heard it.
Yeah, you heard it. Yeah, you didn't want to. I mean, I've had guys who played in the '70s who said they just didn't want anything to do with a game in the Spectrum against those Flyers, and when the teams used to be tough and they'd send you a message, and but I just don't think it's the same now.
And I'll add, Kevin, that even into the '90s, I remember when Terry Crisp was coaching Calgary and then in Tampa Bay. He kind of carried those lessons from the '70s with him. And in some of those series where they were trailing early, and those game twos would get ugly. I mean, they'd be just they take 4 hours to play. And that you just don't see that anymore. You don't.
Well, and it's not like it's only in hockey.
Right.
I mean, in baseball, you hit a home run. If you're the next guy up, you better stand about 2 inches farther away from the plate.
Right. Oh yeah, it's part of the intimidation. I love intimidation in sports. I do. It's one of the things I've always loved.
Right.
But yet in order to pull this off, you need a really strong coach to pull this off. And I think Terry's proven to be a successful coach. I don't know how strong he is, but but you also need a really strong leadership core to do it. Like my favorite example of this that happened in the most recent times, and I've brought this up before. Excuse me but I love the story of Chris Pronger and the puck in the Chicago series. That's one of my favorite things of Chicago wins the first 2 games easily against the Flyers in that Stanley Cup final. But come back to Philly, and all the talk is why Pronger is stealing the pucks at the end of the games that the Hawks have been collecting the entire time. The Hawks had collected every puck at the end of the game that they had won, and Pronger was out, made sure he was out on the ice for the ends of both games, grabbed the puck and skated off both times in Chicago. And then the Hawks were like, "What's going on?" And Pronger would deny it. He was denying it flat out, even though we all saw it in videos, him doing it both times, and he still said, "That's not what I was doing." And he said, "Well, we saw you take the puck." "No, I didn't take the puck." He's like, people were showing him their iPad. "Look, this is you. This is the puck. You're taking." He's like, "I didn't do that." And Pronger would sit there and just completely deny it. And he was playing with the media. He was and it bought the Flyers some time to stay out of the spotlight and figure out how to combat the Hawks. And the Flyers came back and won 2 games in Philly. It took them back to a series that they didn't seem to have any right to be in, and they got back in the series.
I'm by no means writing the postmortem for the Habs right now because it's conceivable they could come back and win the series, but I almost think that it was a little bit of a disservice to Marc Bergevin and to Therrien that they got as far as they did last year because it raised the expectation level in Montreal. They
were very good this year, Mike. I mean,
I'm not saying.
So, I mean, did they get too far, or were they just? I mean, you could say the same thing about the Rangers, right? I mean, the Rangers got even further.
But what I'm saying is that. What I'm saying is that they're a team sort of in transition right now. They're bringing a lot of young kids around, the Galchenyuk and Beaulieu and a couple of your young Jacob Delarose at forward. They're bringing a lot of their young kids up. They're getting rid of the older players. Some of the older players, like they got rid of Danny Briere, they got rid of Rene Bourque. They're a team in transition who rode a superhuman year from Carey Price to where they got during the regular season. I think that Bergevin during the offseason is going to continue that, and he's going to probably try to acquire some help on defense. He's got some cap room because Gonchar's contract expires. There's going to be some additions to that roster that will make them a more complete team. But right now, they're not a complete team, and that's why I think they're going to lose to Tampa Bay.
Well, I want to just have a last word. I'm going to actually have to leave to take the Tampa Bay press conference, but I think the Canadiens are a good team. I just think they're not. The last piece to come together is their offense, and they were actually a opportunistic scoring team. Like they seemed to get the goals when they needed them this season. So I mean, I think last season they showed what kind of team they were, and like all teams, they made a few changes, and guys are maturing. And but I don't think this team needs any sort of big moves. I think it just needs to figure out a way to maybe add a couple of guys to score some goals. Like, I still think the Canadiens are a good team. They're going to be dealing with some issues. Markov's getting older, and they need to sort of solve their scoring issues. But like, they were one of the more consistent teams in the league this season. So,
They really were.
I don't think they really need to do what they did last night. I think they just need to remember they're the Canadiens and they can find ways to win. Sure, they're heavily dependent upon Carey Price, but if he can have a good game, they can figure out how to get 3 goals against Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning are not the Devils of the 1990s.
Right. That's the thing.
They're going to give up some chances. So, they just got to find a way to do it. But I think the Canadiens, I didn't see last year as a fluke at all. So.
No, I agree. We'll let you go, Kevin. But obviously, thanks so much for jumping in, and as always, and remember the basic headline for tomorrow is the Canadiens have to catch lightning in a bottle.
Exactly. See you later.
See you then. All right. So I think that they can. I don't know that they can. I really feel like what Bruce was doing was a start towards something. And it gives them some hope. I haven't seen anybody in Calgary willing to step up and do the same kind of thing. And they've got to. The thing is, Anaheim actually has players that can be suckered into playing into playing a dirtier type of game. Like, you can get Kessler and Getzlaf and Perry to actually bite on some things, where I don't think the guys on Tampa, like Stamkos and Johnson and Hedman, are going to bite on such things. So I think you have a different kind of situation.
And that was what Ferland did in the first round against Vancouver. I mean, he annoyed the hell out of guys like Burroughs and Bieksa. He got in their kitchen. He got into their heads. And, he got elbowed in game 1, and that's sort of like, silenced him a little bit. So
he needs to be that player. They need that. They need that right now, or else it's just going to be a very, very quick series. And Anaheim's going to have an easy path. Basically what looks like a pretty easy path. I mean, path to the semifinals. I mean, the conference finals. What team build? I mean, and we haven't talked. Let's actually talk about the series that really is competitive right now, which is the Rangers and Cap series. This is a really good one. I mean.
Yeah.
This is a top-notch series. What are your thoughts so far on this one, Bill?
Well, it's been a terrific series. You can easily see this one going 7.
Yeah.
I think the way the Rangers bounced back in Game 2 after the Ward goal with barely over a second left in Game 1. I mean, that can be a crushing blow to a team. The way that and Lundqvist was sensational in Game 2, but it was really the entire team. It wasn't just Lundqvist.
Yeah.
I thought that the way the Rangers came out at the start of Game 2 was very, very, very impressive. They played their game. They played they played the game that got them where they got to in the regular season, and why they were finalists last year, and why they very well could get there again. At the same time, Washington really showed their resiliency too. That goal Ovechkin scored was unbelievable at a time where the checking got very tight in the game, and the rest of the game was terrific. I mean, every game, it's one of those series where I don't think there's going to be a carryover from the previous game. I think every game is going to be its own little story unto itself, and really totally up for grabs. I mean, this is a terrific series, right? Just what playoff hockey's all about. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah, it feels like an old school, Patrick Division series.
And just when you thought that the Rangers, I mean, not that they were leading 2-0. It was the second period. They were dominating. They were playing great hockey, and Washington gets that goal to make it 2-1. And right back into the game. I mean, it was a nip and tuck battle the entire game. And I have to say, and I've been a harsh critic of Ovechkin throughout his career. I mean, not playing a two-way game. He is playing a two-way game now, and he's a bull in a china shop out there. He's hitting everything. He's back checking. He is really playing the way that he needs to play for that team to go far in the postseason. It's just a question. They're coming up against a team that I think is slightly better in all areas. But with the loss of Zuccarello, and I don't think he's going to play in this series, and one error like that happened late in Game 1 can just can throw things up for grabs. And I think this series is going 7 games. I can see the Rangers winning one of the games in Washington, and then it's basically a best of 3. So yeah, I mean it's not the most exciting hockey, but it's tough. It's you got big guys there. Players
There's a lot of drama in it, though. There's a lot of drama in it, more drama than you would expect from these two teams. Kind of, there is, definitely Ovechkin. The Ovechkin-Lundqvist thing is interesting. To me, like there's a fun battle going on there, but there's a mental game going on between the two of them.
Ovechkin's They don't like each other.
They don't like each other. Ovechkin's, goal in the first game was crazy. I mean, that was one of the best shots you'll ever see. And then he almost did it again. He hit the crossbar later in the game on a blind turnaround shot from high in the slot. I mean, Ovechkin's just showing crazy skill. I mean, we always know Ovechkin has skill, but there's a reason he's the only 50 goal scorer. Yeah, he's just nuts.
The Achilles.
Two other things I want to point out. I think that you have compared to past Washington teams, I think this is where Barry Trotz is showing some of his mettle as a coach. Right. That this is a different Capitals team.
Totally.
And I think we should also comment on the maturity that Brayden Holtby is showing as a goaltender. Now, he's really coming into his own. He has one of the best goaltending coaches in the world, and Mitch Korn there.
I agree completely.
I just think he's been sensational.
Goaltending coaches are completely underrated. And this is one case where Trotz, the first thing he does when he gets the coaching job in Washington is bring this guy over.
Yeah, and one thing that Trotz is doing. One thing that Trotz is doing wonderfully is, there are not many weaknesses on that Ranger roster, but Dan Boyle is one of them, and he's concentrating on making that vulnerability, something that costs the Rangers. And I know that Boyle scored a goal in Game 2, but he's clearly the worst of the 6 defensemen on that roster right now. And every time he's out there, he gets hit, and they force him to give away the puck, and he could cost that team a game.
Yeah, no, he really could. I mean, it's making for an interesting thing when you look at the Stanley Cup Finals and you try to project ahead, to who can take out Chicago or Anaheim or even Minnesota or whoever gets there. You look in the East, it's hard. I mean, it's very different kinds of games. There's different kinds of teams. I think Washington might be the most balanced team to bring anybody out. In a weird way, they feel like to me, because they have the scoring, they have the defense, they have the goaltending, and you have an Ovechkin. That gives you a huge advantage right now.
I just if you have Tampa and Chicago in the final, I think it's going to be a track meet. I really do.
It'll be spectacular. It'll be exciting hockey. I mean, it'll
be fast. It'll be exciting. You got deep teams there. The goaltending is questionable with both teams. And that's what I mean. I mean, you're not going to have Corey Crawford standing on his head and making 55 saves and it being a 2-1 game. It's going to be wide open. You could have a 6-5 Stanley Cup Final game between Tampa Bay and Chicago.
That's all the time we have for today, guys. I'm sorry. I got to go take care of my daughter who's hacking up a lung upstairs. Sorry. But we're going to take off. And thanks so much, Bill, for jumping in.
Anytime, guys.
I appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk to you then.